Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Elias Thorne. This town, nestled in the folds of hills that bleed rust in the autumn, isn't just where I live. It's the marrow in my bones. My grandfather didn't just build Thorne Industries. He sunk its foundations into the bedrock of this community, creating something vital, something people depended on. It's a legacy I inherited, a weight I've always carried with a certain pride. I grew up breathing Thorne air, then sharpened my mind at MIT, learning the cold logic of systems, before honing the art of the deal at Oxford. I returned not just out of duty, but from a deep-seated need to preserve what generations had bled for. I thought I understood the calculus of a well-lived life, a thriving business, the quiet respect of neighbors who'd known me since I was a boy, and Sarah. When I first met her, she was like finding sunlight in a shaded grove, warm, vibrant, with an effortless grace that made my structured world feel brighter. Her kindness felt genuine, her laughter infectious. We married after a year, a whirlwind courtship that felt like destiny. Soon after, she gave me Caleb. He's 2 now, a miniature storm of pure energy, his laughter the only truly uncomplicated sound left in my house. For a time, the equation seemed balanced, perfect even. But perfection is an unstable element. 5 years. That's how long the facade held. The changes in Sarah were insidious at first, like hairline fractures spreading beneath a veneer. Designer labels replaced familiar comfort. More time sculpting her body at the gym, mirroring the harder, glossier edge she began cultivating. Then came the surgical enhancements, the clothes shrinking, tightening, becoming costumes for a role I no longer recognized. She found a new circle, women whose laughter was sharp, whose eyes constantly scanned for admiration. Their conversations a currency of gossip and luxury. One evening, over a dinner growing cold between us, I tried to breach the silence. "Sarah, you're out a lot these days," I began, watching her thumb trace patterns on her phone screen. She didn't look up. "Is there a problem with me having a life, Elias?" "No, of course not. It's just the clubs, the late nights. It isn't like you used to be." Her eyes, when they finally lifted, held a familiar impatience. She sipped her wine. "I'm more than just Caleb's mother, you know? I need stimulation. I fought to keep my voice level. I understand that. I just what?" She cut in, setting the phone down with a soft click that echoed in the tension. "You're buried in work day and night. Do you even see me when I'm here?" The accusation landed like a physical blow because it was a calculated lie. I saw everything. I saw how Caleb's bedtime stories became my solitary duty. I saw the distracted gaze that skimmed past me. I saw the meticulous effort she put into her appearance for nights out, a stark contrast to the indifference she showed at home. Then the whispers started. In a town this small, secrets fester but rarely stay buried. There were knowing glances exchanged over coffee cups, the strained politeness from people who suddenly couldn't quite meet my eye. The call came from Marcus Riley, Mark, who owned the downtown tavern and whose loyalty ran deeper than casual friendship. He'd seen Sarah with another man, not talking, not laughing, tangled together in a dark corner booth, a display raw and desperate enough to curdle the stomach. Kissing, hands mapping territories that belonged solely to me. Sleep became an impossibility that night. I lay beside her, the scent of her strange new perfume clinging to the sheets, listening to the even rhythm of her breathing. She slept the sleep of the untroubled, or perhaps, the utterly unburdened by conscience. Morning brought a fragile light. Once Caleb was fed, settled with his blocks on the living room floor, I found her in the kitchen, nursing her coffee. "I know," I said. The words were quiet, stripped bare, but heavy as stone in the sunlit room. She offered a vague glance. "Know what, Elias?" A ragged breath escaped me. Don't insult me with games. I know you're cheating." She finally met my gaze, and a flicker of something cold, amusement, maybe, danced in her eyes. Then, incredibly, she laughed. A low, throaty sound devoid of humor. "Well," she said, taking another deliberate sip. It took you long enough to piece it together. Nausea churned in my gut. My God, Sarah, is that all you have to say? She set down her mug, tilting her head with the condescending air of someone explaining the obvious to a child. The way I see it, Elias, you have two choices. My jaw locked. Go on. This is a no-fault state, she stated, her voice maddeningly serene, as if reciting terms. We never signed a prenuptial agreement. You divorce me and Thorn Industries bleeds alimony for the next 15-20 years. Child support naturally. You'll get Caleb every other weekend. Maybe a holiday if I'm feeling generous. While I continue living quite comfortably in this house. A chilling void opened in my chest. My boy, I echoed, the words tasting like ash. You mean my son? A smirk played on her lips. Oh, Elias, I always meant to tell you. She shrugged, a casual dismissal that felt like a razor cut. Yes, Caleb is yours. I wasn't that reckless. Had a DNA test done discreetly right after he was born. Just to be sure. She watched my face, savoring the impact like a connoisseur tasting rare wine. I forced my teeth apart, the muscles in my jaw screaming. And the other choice? Sarah leaned forward, propping her chin on her hand, her eyes gleaming. The other choice is you adapt. Except that I have needs, appetites. Perhaps in 5 years, 10, I'll tire of the novelty. She smiled then, a bright, false smile that didn't reach her eyes. I think it's the better option for you, really. I'll still share your bed when you require it. No issue there. And I promise, she added, spreading her hands as if closing a business deal, I'll strive for discretion. No need for public embarrassment. Her expression was utterly devoid of shame, only a chilling pragmatism. What do you say? The walls of the kitchen seemed to close in. Rage, thick and suffocating, clawed at my throat. The logical part of my brain, the MIT, the Oxford training, screamed red alert. Disengage, retreat before instinct obliterates reason, before you do something that costs you everything, including Caleb. I turned sharply, my fists clenched so tightly my nails bit into my palms, drawing blood. I stormed out, the screen door slamming behind me. And as I crossed the porch, I heard it again, her laughter, cold and sharp, echoing in the quiet morning air, branding itself onto my soul. That day, the Elias Thorn everyone knew began to die. In his place, something colder, harder took root. Revenge isn't born in the heat of fury. That's mere violence. True revenge is a blueprint, drawn with icy precision. It requires patience. It requires planning. Takes time. And I suddenly had nothing but time. Sarah lived for the moment, chasing ephemeral thrills, blind to the inevitable collision with consequence. That was her weakness. That was my advantage. The first piece fell into place quickly. Mark Riley, my friend, my informant, now became my investigator. He dug into Sarah's orbit, mapping her movements, identifying her partners. Most were transient figures, men drawn to her beauty and the thrill of transgression. But one name surfaced repeatedly, anchoring the sordid constellation. Ricardo Vargas, known as Ricky. Not just an illicit lover, player. A mid-level dealer moving product through my town, poisoning the roots my grandfather had planted. Mark slid a manila folder across the scarred surface of his bar's back table. Photos, videos, timestamps. Each image was a fresh stab wound. Sarah, draped across my bed, in my home entwined with Vargas. The casual intimacy, the proprietary way his hand rested on her hip, it was a desecration. This wasn't just infidelity, it was a contamination. He was filth. A sickness that had breached the walls of my life, invited in by my own wife. The urge to smash something, to inflict raw, physical pain was overwhelming. Mark must have seen the tremor in my hands, the darkness gathering in my eyes. He put a steady hand on my shoulder. Elias. His voice was low, urgent. I know what you're feeling, but don't do anything reckless. That's their game. You're smarter than that. I let out a harsh breath, the air scraping my lungs. You don't understand, Mark. Reputation is currency here. A respected man whose wife becomes common property. I scoffed. The bitterness acrid. That respect evaporates. The only way to reclaim it is to seize it back, decisively. Mark nodded slowly. Then do it smart. Make your move, but keep your hands immaculate. He was right. Primal rage demanded immediate, bloody satisfaction. But strategy required distance, precision. No mistakes, no loose ends. This was no longer just about Sarah. It was about restoring the Thorn name, reclaiming my standing, protecting Caleb's future. My hands had to remain clean, metaphorically speaking. Vargas wasn't operating in a vacuum. He had muscle connections south of the border. Going after him directly was suicide. I needed leverage, an instrument of power immune to conventional morality. I needed someone who understood the town's dark undercurrents because he swam in them daily. There was only one name, Sheriff Brody Vance. Vance was a permanent fixture, unmarried, seemingly uninterested in anything beyond maintaining his grip on the town's less savory enterprises. He'd been a hunting buddy of my father's, a relationship built on shared silences and mutual pragmatism. That connection might grant me an audience, but little else. I walked into his office without an appointment, the smell of stale coffee and cheap cigars hanging in the air. He glanced up from his paperwork, his eyes narrowed slightly. "Thorn," he drawled, tapping a pen rhythmically. "Heard the missus has been diversifying her portfolio." My jaw tightened. "Then you know." He finally gave me his full attention, his expression unreadable, weathered like old leather. "Course I know. Whole damn town knows." He leaned back, folding his arms across his barrel chest. "And before you ask for favors, let me be clear. I don't particularly care." It wasn't unexpected, but the bluntness still stung. "You don't care that cartel-affiliated scum is dealing poison in your jurisdiction?" A slow, humorless smirk touched his lips. "You think Vargas is the first Thorn? Or the last?" He chuckled, a dry rustling sound. "You spent too much time in Ivy Towers. This town runs on arrangements. Everybody gets a taste. Even the sheriff's department?" "Especially the sheriff's department," he confirmed, leaning forward conspiratorially. "Keeps the peace, relatively speaking. A predictable flow is better than chaos." I allowed a slow, calculating smile to form. "I know that, Brody. I know you clear $8,000 a month, tax-free. That deputy idling outside your door." I nodded towards the window. 1,500. "And the other one? The quiet one who monitors your encrypted channels?" I let the implication hang before adding softly, 500. Monthly. Vance's smirk widened into a genuine, if cynical, grin. He shook his head. "You always were sharp, Elias. Your old man said you had a head for numbers." He sighed. "But like I said, it's about arrangements." I reached into the leather satchel at my feet, withdrawing a thick envelope. I placed it squarely on the desk between us. "I understand arrangements," I said, my voice smooth, controlled. "This is a retainer, a gesture of goodwill." Inside lay $10,000 in crisp $100 bills. Benjamin Franklin staring impassively upwards. Vance eyed the envelope, then me, his interest piqued. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "My offer is straightforward. Tomorrow night, I provide a substantial contribution. Enough to ensure departmental loyalty and operational silence for the foreseeable future. 100,000. A significant upgrade to your current revenue stream." I tapped the envelope. "In return, Ricardo Vargas disappears. Permanently. A vacuum is created. Another dealer will inevitably fill it. Business continues. Your income stream stabilizes. Likely increases." I leaned back, studying his face. He remained impassive, but his eyes were calculating. "And if I decline?" he asked, testing me. "If you decline," I replied, my tone hardening slightly, "I make one call. To Agent Miller at the DEA. You might know the name. Old family acquaintance. From my father's DC connections." Vance's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I offer Miller the same information I've gathered about your arrangements, plus Vargas as a low-hanging fruit to boost his career. I'll suggest he clean house thoroughly while he's at it. Your name, Brody, will be at the top of that list. I let the silence stretch. That's not my preferred path, I admitted, softening my tone slightly. Our families have history. My father respected you in his way. But history won't stop a federal task force if you force my hand. I leaned forward again. The choice is yours. But understand this, my patience is finite. Vance's lips curled. He picked up the envelope, weighed it, then slid it into his top drawer. You got stones, Thorne. More than just brains. He nodded, a flicker of something that might have been grudging respect in his eyes. Saved yourself a fortune in divorce court by spending a fraction here. He laced his fingers together. All right, kid. You got a deal. Consider the Vargas problem resolved. He looked at me intently. My word. We shook hands, a silent understanding passing between us. As I left, a sliver of doubt remained. Could he deliver? That evening, I found Sarah preening before her bedroom mirror, adjusting the straps of a crimson dress that clung to her like a second skin. The air was thick with her expensive, cloying perfume, a scent that now turned my stomach. I walked past without a word, heading for Caleb's room. He sat illuminated by the soft glow of his night light, murmuring to his toy trucks. Daddy, he chirped, beaming as I entered, holding up a small blue car. V room. I knelt beside him, forcing a smile. That's right, buddy. Let's race. I settled onto the rug, immersing myself in the simple, clean world of a child's imagination. From the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah leaning in the doorway, watching us. That familiar smirk played on her lips. She chuckled softly. Just so you're aware, she announced casually, her voice dripping with saccharine malice. I'm going out. I intend to spend the night with Ricky. My jaw clenched, but I kept my eyes on Caleb's toys. She stepped further into the room, her voice dropping to a taunting whisper. Like I told you, Elias, I do what I want. You can't stop me. If you don't like it, she crossed her arms, her eyes cold steel. Pack your bags. File for divorce. See how well that works out for you. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. She waited a beat, then huffed in exasperation and swept out, pulling the door shut with unnecessary force. Later, after Caleb was asleep, I sat beside his bed for a long time, watching the gentle rise and fall of his small chest, the only anchor left in my turbulent world. The next morning, I was making Caleb pancakes when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. After breakfast, while cleaning the kitchen, it rang again. Same number. Ignored. As I started prepping lunch, it rang a third time. With a sigh, I wiped my hands and answered. Before I could speak, Vance's voice came through, low and steady. Sheriff Vance. Got a hypothetical for you, Thorne. A deliberate pause. You want her breathing or not? I closed my eyes, took a slow breath. The answer wasn't binary. I want her to live, Sheriff, I said, my voice quiet but firm. But I want every day she draws breath to be a torment. I want her to curse the fact that she woke up. A dry chuckle on the other end. Damn, Thorne. You're colder than I gave you credit for. The line went dead. I moved through the rest of the day on autopilot, a hollow calm enveloping me. Late that evening, the phone rang again, another unknown number. I answered immediately, a male voice, heavily accented. Senor Thorne? Your wife. She has been in a terrible accident. She is at our clinic. Very badly injured. My voice remained steady. What happened? She was brought in unconscious. Many broken bones. Her friend, he did not survive. She is stable for now. I got the clinic's location, 20 miles south of the border, thanked him, and hung up. Grabbing my keys, I headed for my truck. As I pulled out of the driveway, I dialed Vance. You get the call from our friends down south? He asked before I could speak, his tone casual. Yes, I'm heading there now. Hold up. Call you right back, he said and hung up. Minutes later, my phone rang, another unknown number. It's Vance, he said quickly. Burner phone. Listen close. They're sending Sarah back stateside in an ambulance. Whatever happens, whatever they say, do not get in that ambulance with her. Drive behind it. Got it. Understood, I replied. The clinic was a grim, low-slung building under flickering fluorescent lights. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach and decay. I found her easily. Sarah lay on a gurney, swathed in bandages. Her right leg was elevated in a crude cast, both arms splinted. Her face was a mask of bruises and swelling, a stitched gash traversing her forehead. Her eyes fluttered open. A faint ghost of a smile touched her battered lips. "Elias," she whispered, her voice raspy, strangely triumphant. "Knew you'd come. Love." I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a vast emptiness. I turned away and approached the doctor, a weary-looking man with bloodshot eyes. "We stabilized your wife," he said, his gaze sharp, assessing. "Her companion." He gestured vaguely towards an adjacent alcove where a sheet covered a still form. "He was not fortunate." He lifted the sheet just enough. Ricardo Vargas, eyes wide, vacant, staring at the peeling ceiling. His body was unnaturally contorted. Spine shattered. Lungs collapsed on impact. Steering column. Well, he let the sheet fall. I took a slow breath. "The cause?" The doctor offered a thin, knowing smile. "Our butcher gringo, Sheriff Vance, could tell you more about the sudden brake failure of the truck they reportedly hit." He clearly knew more than he was saying. "Can I take her?" I asked. He nodded, that same unsettling grin spreading. "See, the transport is ready." They loaded Sarah into the back of a waiting ambulance, securing the gurney. I got into my truck and followed as it pulled onto the dark, dusty road heading north. We were perhaps 10 miles from the border when I saw something detach from the ambulance's undercarriage. A flicker of sparks. The vehicle swerved violently, fishtailing across the road. Then, impossibly fast, the driver's side door flew open, and a figure bailed out, hitting the dirt shoulder and rolling. I slammed on my brakes, engine roaring, and jumped out, heart pounding against my ribs. I ran to the driver, who was already pushing himself up, coughing in the dust cloud. "Are you okay?" I asked, grabbing his arm. He brushed himself off, then glanced back at the ambulance. In the next instant, it erupted. A blinding orange fireball mushroomed into the night sky, the concussion wave hitting me like a physical blow. Flames devoured the vehicle, sending plumes of greasy black smoke spiraling upwards. The driver stood impassively, watching the inferno as if observing a controlled burn. He straightened his shirt, then turned to me, his face illuminated by the flickering firelight. A faint smirk played on his lips. "Well," he said calmly, "that takes care of the evidence trail. Accidents need to look authentic for the reports, you understand." He met my eyes. "Secondary explosion due to fuel leak after initial impact damage. Tragic." My ears were ringing. The heat radiating from the wreckage was intense. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Is she dead?" He didn't answer directly. He walked calmly towards the inferno, boots crunching on debris. Without hesitation, he reached into the edge of the flames, grappling with something, and dragged a blackened, smoking form out onto the dirt, just clear of the intense heat. He turned back to me, his expression unreadable in the dancing light. "Nope," he said, his voice eerily casual. "Still breathing, charred but alive, just as requested." He paused, then added with a chilling detachment, "Suffering takes time, Senor Thorne. This is just the beginning." There was an efficiency to his movements, a lack of emotion that was deeply unsettling. Before I could respond, another ambulance, lights off, pulled up silently. 2 paramedics emerged, moving with practiced speed. They loaded the burned figure onto a stretcher without a word, secured it, and drove off into the darkness, heading towards a different hospital, presumably one arranged by Vance. I didn't follow. I had seen enough. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a strange cocktail of adrenaline, exhaustion, and the chilling finality of what I had set in motion. I drove home, the image of the burning ambulance seared into my retinas. The next morning, my phone rang. Sheriff Vance. Mr. Thorne. His voice was professionally somber. Regrettably, I have bad news regarding your wife. There's been a terrible accident during her transport. Could you come down to the station? He hung up before I could reply. I found Vance in his office, leaning back in his chair, radiating smug satisfaction. He gestured to the seat opposite his desk. Just finalizing the incident report, he said conversationally. We'll head over to Fairview Hospital afterwards. He buzzed his intercom. A young deputy entered, notebook ready. Vance began dictating, his voice smooth, authoritative. Mrs. Serafina Thorne was returning from Mexico with an associate, Mr. Ricardo Vargas. Evidence suggests they were operating a vehicle under the influence of illicit substances when they collided with the rear of a commercial truck. He glanced at me, a conspiratorial smirk flickering. Tragically, Mr. Vargas succumbed to his injuries at a clinic south of the border. While Mrs. Thorne was being transported back to the U.S. via ambulance, a secondary accident occurred due to apparent mechanical failure, resulting in a vehicle fire. He shook his head with mock solemnity. Poor woman's been through hell. She's currently receiving treatment at Fairview. He turned to me. Ready. The drive to the hospital was silent. Vance hummed tunelessly. At Fairview, I was met by a doctor with tired eyes and a grin set to his mouth. He led me down a quiet, sterile corridor. The air smelled sharply of antiseptic and faintly, disturbingly, of burnt flesh. She's stable, conscious, the doctor stated, his tone clinical, detached. However, her injuries are catastrophic. Multiple spinal fractures. He consulted his chart. 5 vertebrae. Prognosis for regaining mobility is negligible. Full paralysis from the waist down is almost certain. I stood motionless, absorbing the clinical detachment. The burns are extensive, he continued, watching my reaction closely. 3rd degree over approximately 60% of her body. We've stabilized her fluid levels and applied initial dressings, but the road ahead involves numerous surgeries. Skin grafts, extensive reconstruction. He paused, then added quietly, both breast implants were compromised by the heat. They essentially melted. I felt a strange stillness settle over me. Can I see her? He nodded towards a door at the end of the hall. As I started walking, Vance intercepted the doctor, placing a hand on his arm. Perhaps give the husband a moment alone first, Doc, he suggested smoothly, guiding him away. I pushed open the door. The room was dim, dominated by the rhythmic sigh and beep of monitors. Sarah lay in the center, cocooned in white dressings. Her eyes found mine wide, reflecting the faint lights of the machines. Fear, desperation, maybe a flicker of hope. It was hard to tell beneath the layer of thick white ointment covering what remained of her face. Her lips moved, cracked and swollen. I held up a hand, stopping whatever words she was forming. Don't, I said, my voice low, devoid of inflection. Just listen. Her eyes remained fixed on mine, waiting. Your lover, Vargas, is dead. I began, the words precise, cold. You are confined to this bed, likely for the rest of your life. The doctor speaks of rebuilding you, grafting skin, trying to approximate a human form. I let the silence hang, heavy with the unspoken horrors of her future. Before you conjure any delusions of rescue, of forgiveness, I leaned closer. Let me be unequivocally clear. I arranged this. Every broken bone, every inch of charred skin. It was purchased, and I will not spend another cent on your treatment. Her breathing hitched, a faint, ragged sound against the machine's hum. A smile touched my lips, entirely without warmth. You told me just days ago that you would do whatever you wanted, and there was nothing I could do. You were wrong. I tilted my head slightly. Now I am doing what I want, and there is nothing you can do. I stepped back from the bed. I will visit occasionally, to observe, to remember. The cruelest cut came last. Caleb will never see you again. As far as my son is concerned, his mother died in that fire. You are already a ghost. Tears welled in her eyes, tracking clean paths through the ointment, but she remained silent. Now, I continued, the considerate host offering final options. Since I value efficiency, I'll offer you a choice. I held up one hand. Option 1, you endure this. Live out your days as a grotesque monument to your choices. Broken, disfigured, utterly alone. I raised my other hand. Option 2, I can arrange for a cessation of suffering. An overdose, perhaps, administered during the night. Quick, painless, an end. Her gaze flickered between my hands, her ruined face impassive beneath the medication and bandages. Then, slowly, deliberately, her eyes settled on the hand representing the second option. I nodded once. Decision made. Turning, I walked out of the room, leaving the rhythmic beeping of the machines behind me. Vance was waiting, leaning against the wall, that knowing look in his eyes. I relayed Sarah's final request, the details stark and unambiguous. Vance grinned, a slow, predatory stretching of his lips. Now that, he said, pushing himself off the wall, is the kind of closure I can facilitate. Consider it done. 7 days later, Seraphina Thorne was cremated. No service, no eulogy, no mourners weeping by a graveside. Just the sterile hum of the crematorium, the roar of the flames, and then silence. I watched the process, felt the finality settle like dust, and experienced nothing remotely resembling grief. She was simply erased. That evening, Vance pulled up to my house in a gleaming new pickup truck, top of the line, smelling of new leather and power. He swaggered out, cigarette dangling from his lips, grinning broadly. "Damn, Thorne," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Smell that? Freedom." I offered only a non-committal glance. He chuckled. "Got a new player settling in," he continued, leaning against his new acquisition. "Moved in yesterday, filling the Vargas vacuum. Big operation. Guess who's already on his payroll?" He tapped his own chest proudly. "Congratulations," I muttered. He exhaled smoke, the grin never leaving his face. "Hey, didn't forget your generosity. This truck." He patted the hood. "Sweet ride. Much appreciated." He flicked the cigarette into the street. "Well, duty calls." He climbed in, revved the engine unnecessarily loud, and drove off into the twilight, still smiling. Later that same night, Sheriff Brody Vance was likely in his office, perhaps pouring himself a celebratory bourbon, contemplating his improved financial situation, when his deputy knocked, looking unnerved. "Sheriff?" the deputy stammered. "There's someone here to see you." Vance raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? So? I think you need to meet him, sir." Vance sighed, waved him dismissively. "Send him in." A man entered, not physically imposing, but radiating a coiled stillness, an unnerving calm. He wore a simple suit, and his smile was polite, practiced, but utterly cold. It didn't touch his eyes. He extended a hand. "Sheriff Vance." His voice was smooth, accented. "My name is Mateo Garza. People sometimes call me El Casanero." He paused, his smile widening slightly, revealing nothing. "I trust the transition has been smooth? I believe we have arrangements to discuss." Vance looked at the extended hand, then into the man's flat, watchful eyes. A slow, knowing smile spread across his own face, erasing the earlier smugness, replaced by pragmatic acceptance. He reached out and shook Mateo Garza's hand. "Garza," Vance acknowledged, his voice regaining its customary gravelly tone. "Was wondering when you'd formally introduce yourself." "About damn time." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.